Hey, what's up guys? It's Joe from GadgetryTech.com, and today we are reviewing the SteelSeries Rival 500 mouse. Now this is a 15-button MOBA MMO mouse that they market as being designed for the natural movements of your hand. What that means is on the side of the mouse, if you look, there isn't a traditional 12-button grid, which is very common with MOBA MMO games. Instead, they function so you can use your thumb in different movements to interact and control your player or whatever you're doing, instead of trying to memorize which one goes where. So it's kind of nice. It takes some getting used to, but it's a more natural way of movement as opposed to trying to always just use your thumb in one way and try to make sure you press the right button. Now with that being said, to talk about specs, this uses the PixArt PMW 3360 sensor, which is excellent for first-person shooters. Even though the mouse is a little bit heavy at 129 grams, if you like a heavier mouse, it'll still work extremely well. You don't have to worry about the sensor letting you down. So overall dimensions is 4.68 inches long by 3.08 inches wide. The depth is just over 1.5 inches at 1.71 tall. That's at the peak height, of course. It's a very aggressive curve, so naturally the front and rear aren't that high. As far as the polling rate goes, it's 1 millisecond polling rate, which means it's 1,000 hertz refresh rate, so that'll help again with accuracy. There is 0 hardware acceleration, which is good because you don't want to have inconsistent movement when you're playing certain games. Naturally, with any high-end mouse, it is RGB. That's kind of the big thing nowadays. 16.7 or 8 million color options. Of course, if you have that time to dial it in, it's great. You can separate the front LED by the scroll wheel and the palm to be a totally different light scheme. Not only will it be different colors, but you can actually have it pulse differently, etc. One other thing I want to point out is the bottom here where it says Rival. You can download the 3D files to print your own custom inserts. Let's pop that off. Obviously it doesn't look pretty without this thing, but you can make your own. So if you have your gamer tag or whatever you want to put there, it's much easier to put on. You can print your own. Going on the bottom of the mouse, this switch right here is to disable the bottom buttons. As you can tell, mine was off. In my experience, I actually preferred it to be locked because I didn't need all of the buttons. Otherwise, these bottom ones are very easy to click. And because of that, if I'm doing movement or readjusting on the mouse pad, I inadvertently click this a couple times, which if you have that mapped to a particular weapon or ability, that can become a problem. So by locking this, now this serves as a thumb rest, if you will, which is more natural for my grip, and I still have a whole array of buttons on top that I can use in addition to everything up here. Now this center button here is your DPI. There's 2 modes, so you think of it as a high-low. Scroll wheel works extremely well. There is a clicky or a notchy feedback, and there's a button on the outside which is a bit stiffer than some of the others. So in my experience, if you look up the research of this mouse online, there's a few people reporting of disconnects while gaming. I haven't had that happen yet, so I'm not going to say it's a serious problem, just in the sense that I don't think it's across the board. It seems to be more relevant to a recent firmware update, which I applied, and I gamed on this for several hours last night without a single disconnect. So it might be depending on the game you play, but just something to keep in mind if you're having mouse disconnects. Don't go crazy. It may actually be the mouse, and stay alert for a firmware update. As far as the grip goes, this is designed to work on your palm grip, claw grip, however you may hold it. Because of that, it is fairly short, and if you have larger hands like myself and you like palm grip, you have kind of a void at the back of your hand, so it doesn't feel quite as full compared to some other mouses that are a little bit longer. Now on that same token, because it's more compact, it might actually work better for those who prefer a claw grip. Let's see, what are we missing here? So the cord is 6.5 feet long. It's a 2-meter cord. It is rubber. It's not a nylon braid or anything, but I found that the build quality is nice. It's nice and thick, and you have this little protective guide that comes out to keep the cord from fraying or having any long-term issues as far as liability goes. Now this mouse can be found for $80 online. You can buy it directly from SteelSeries. You can also find it at places like Best Buy, Newegg, Amazon, etc. All right, next thing we're going to do is take a look at the SteelSeries engine to see how you can customize the mouse, and then kind of provide some final feedback at the end. Okay, so after plugging in the Rival 500 mouse, we went onto the SteelSeries website and downloaded SteelSeries Engine 3. This is the software that you need to modify any of the settings on your SteelSeries hardware. That includes keyboard, mice, I believe the color mouse pad that you have, as well as the SteelSeries headsets. So because this is the only SteelSeries device currently plugged into the computer, all you see is the Rival 500. So we're going to click on that and load some configs. So this window will pop up and give us a really quick overview of what my current configurations are, as well as different profiles and presets I have set on the left-hand side here. Now I haven't set too much on this, but I have been experimenting with it for a while. And one thing I really like is if you click on left at the top here, I can look at the buttons on the left side of the controller. This slide button lock on the bottom will actually change if I flick it physically on the mouse itself. It'll go to red and then show me which buttons are disabled. The ones that are highlighted in green here are buttons that I already customized, and one thing I did was kind of set it up for Adobe Premiere. So the big kicker for me on this mouse, and there's the letter V that's highlighted, is I can customize buttons that work on specific applications, which is very helpful for people who like to do a lot of post-production work and not have to hit different hotkeys on the keyboard, go back and forth with the mouse by clicking on different buttons. I can pre-program some of those shortcuts in and save myself a lot of time. The biggest two is going from the blade tool to trim a video and then going back to the selector tool so I can go back to dragging transitions on and moving video footage from side to side. If I click on tactile settings here, I can choose to get feedback, so when I switch back I know that I clicked the right button and I don't have to question which one I'm on. So I'm going to leave that disabled for now. Another cool thing I want to point out on this screen is the DPI settings on the right. When you use this button here in the center of the mouse, you can change from a low-high DPI, if you will, or whatever direction you configure it. And that'll go from, let's see how low we can get this here, down to from 100 DPI all the way up to 16,000 DPI, which is extremely fast. So we're going to hit revert so we can actually control this thing a little bit better. So make a timer. So if you want a custom cooldown timer, you can do that, which is nice. So if you press a specific button, you can get tactile feedback to say, hey, it's been 20 seconds. You can use that ability once again. Acceleration, I don't usually like to do. It should be fairly neutral, and there is zero hardware acceleration on the mouse. So again, it's very easy to control. Angle snapping, that makes it so if you're moving from left to right, it reduces the tendency of your hand to move up and down as well, kind of making a smooth transition from left to right. Polling rate is how fast the sensor is basically taking pictures of the surface below it. At 1,000, that is 1 millisecond. Every 1 millisecond, it's taking a new picture, which is extremely fast and very accurate. If I want to edit color on this mouse, I can click right where you see this lime green here, and I can edit the logo. Now I can have different presets like steady, color shift, color breathing, and this actually applies to the mouse instantly because I have live preview on. So I can see those effects without hitting save and screwing up any of my profiles. I can also change the rate of how fast this pulsates. So if I hit close, I can still see that. I didn't hit save yet, so if I hit revert, my mouse will go back to green, and there you go, that changed back to green. Now you can configure this so the top scroll wheel has a completely different behavior than the bottom, different colors, pulsing, color cycling, etc. And you can change that by profile on the left. So if I went back to default, everything turned blue. I go to the Gadgetry Tech profile and everything's lime green again, and with different DPI settings. That also includes different button configurations. Now lastly, before we switch from this, there's a really cool feature I want to point out. B9 is deactivated right now. That's this bottom button here. Instead of assigning it to a traditional key map or even a button click, I can do things like launch application, where I can actually add any executable in Windows, which is really nice for finding shortcuts because I'm not limited to a library that often on some programs misses executables that are installed on your computer. So I can have it load things like Notepad++, OBS, some editing software, whatever I want. One of my favorite features, and this comes in handy if you like to switch, let's say you switch characters in a game, things like that, I can actually switch it to launch configuration. Now, that is really helpful if you switch programs and you don't want to load this software to change profiles, or if you're in one game and you go from one character to a next that has completely different abilities and you have a different mapping style or preference.
So that saves you a lot of time there because you can switch while you're in game. So I'm going to hit cancel. We're going to close this, and let's take a look at one more thing that makes this mouse pretty unique, and that's GameSense. Now I did disable it, but let's turn it back on so you can see what it looks like. GameSense is currently limited to 3 games. You have CSGO, Dota 2, and Minecraft. And when you click on these, you can customize it, add and remove events, etc. There are default events that are pre-programmed. You can have it control lights, you can have it control tactile feedback, so you can get different vibration and pulsing, if you will, from the mouse itself, which I like because I'm not looking at the mouse for color. I'm too busy in the game actually engaged in combat or whatever we're doing. But the vibration is kind of a nice feature. Another cool one, let's say for example at Minecraft, is if you're facing north, you can have it pulse twice. That's what fast heartbeat is, and I can hit the play button so I know what I'm feeling. Add event, and there are some predefined events that are already there, and I can add whatever I want and customize it from there. So this is GameSense. These are the configs, and again, you'll see more stuff here as you go. That about wraps up the software for the Rival 500. We're going to transition into some final thoughts and feedback based off our experience between the software and the mouse itself.
Alright, so that pretty much sums it up. Once again, this is the SteelSeries Rival 500 MMO and MOBA mouse. It'll also serve a good purpose as an FPS mouse if you like to play different games and you don't want to lose the functionality of the additional buttons. Now, I mentioned this briefly in the software. Again, one thing to really consider is the versatility of having a lot of buttons on a mouse that you can assign to keys. If you do a lot of photo and video editing, programming, etc., those buttons can come in handy and be a godsend. Just something as simple as doing the cut effect on a blade to edit a video, or adding a transition effect. Whatever you want to do, you can quickly program that, and that'll save you a lot of time in production. Build quality is excellent, again with the reinforced plastic. The rubber guide that comes out of the mouse to prevent the wire from getting damaged or coming frayed, if you will, is there. The rubberized coating, everything feels solid. There's no rattles. It has a great sensor. The software is very customizable, as you already saw. So for $80, if the application is right for you, I strongly suggest considering it. If you don't need to use all of those buttons, or you play first-person shooters 90% of the time, I would consider looking at a different mouse from SteelSeries or other brands that are better suited as just an FPS mouse. Again, this has the same sensor as the best FPS mice in the industry, so it can perform. You just may not need all those buttons or prefer a different style grip on the mouse. So $80, strong consideration. You really can't go wrong. Check it out at SteelSeries.com or other vendors that may carry it. And if you guys have any questions, be sure to comment below. I'll help you out. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care.